folks, and welcome to this video. We are going to be exploring the settings of X-Plane 10. This is version 10.36, and I'll be trying to show you everything that you need to basically get a smooth flying experience. Over the course of the past year or so, when I started with flight simulation, I noticed that probably one of the most important things in any flight simulator is really to have a smooth experience. When you have the smoothness during flight, that's part of the immersion. As a matter of fact, it really makes you feel that you're flying. Now, I've done a little bit of research, and the human eye is capable of detecting anything below 30 frames. So if you have 30 frames or below, your eye will be able to detect the, if you will, the stuttering that happens. Anything beyond 30, the eye will probably not be able to detect. But anywhere from 50 and above, you'll probably actually feel that you're flying. Now, I've seen a lot of videos on how to set up X-Plane or tweak your kind of NVidia inspector or X-Plane settings menu. But the thing that is missing in all of this is really the baseline. Most of the folks out there do not share their computer specs when they do these videos, and I think there is no relevance to anybody sharing their settings without telling you what kind of settings, what kind of PC they have, or what kind of system they have. I think this is very important so that you can either baseline or benchmark based on the system that you have. So what I'm going to try to do today is I'm going to take you through basically my settings, what I have here in X-Plane, try to explain to you some of the things that I've discovered over the past year playing and tweaking X-Plane, and also I will show you the NVIDIA control panel, what I've done there, and also my PC specs. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to disable the full screen, and I'm going to actually begin with my settings. I have an Alienware Aurora R4. It is an expensive system, but I learned through the past 6 months or so from owning this device is that it's not the top performer for the price that you pay. But live and learn. I'm looking for something a little more powerful than this. But this is what I have today. So the processor is an Intel Core i7 CPU. It's 3.4 gigahertz up to 4 gigahertz with turbo boost. So it's not a weak machine. It's a pretty hefty machine. I've got 32 GB of installed RAM. This is, of course, a 64-bit operating system. I'm running Windows 8.1. And this is a liquid-cooled, it's got a liquid-cooled CPU, Alienware cooling technology, they call it. I'll tell you, this PC is very quiet. I don't hear the fans at all. So it's very, very quiet. It performs well. I've seen a lot better for the price I paid. But this is what I've got here. If you have any questions regarding my settings, please do let me know. I do have dual NVIDIA 780 cards, graphic cards, with 3 GB each. Of course, one of them is not put to use with X-Plane, as it is still not really built for graphic acceleration or two cards or SLI or whatever you want to call that. So that's those are the PC specs. The next thing I want to show you before I get to the X-Plane settings. This is basically my performance here. Currently the clock speed is at 3.7478 gigahertz. I've got basically 6 cores, 12 logical processors there. And of course, this is the, there's the stars. Some cores are, being utilized, some cores are not being utilized. So there you go. This is basically what I've got there. So with that, let me actually delve into the settings of X-Plane and just try to tell you what I've learned through using X-Plane and tweaking and playing with some of the settings. So let's begin over here. Compress textures to save VRAM. Definitely leave this on unless you've got like a GTX Titan with 12 GB. Then it's okay to basically uncompress the textures. This does save a lot of RAM. And by the way, with this off, even with a lot of memory, I noticed that you get a little bit of stutters without compressing the texture. So it does help with the smoothness. I recommend leaving this checked. On the texture resolution, now this is a tricky part. Now if you have a hefty card like maybe a GTX 980 with 4 GB, I think maybe you can go to extreme resolution, but for the 3 GB card, I think it's a little pushing it if you go to extreme resolution. I'll tell you in a minute what that means. But if you look here at the total size of all loaded textures at the current settings is 1.2 gig approximately. It's 1196 megs. As this number increases, basically there will be less processing power for your GPU to render autogen. So that will really affect your performance, and then you will see that basically your frame rate starts dropping. I'll show you in a minute how you can monitor that during gameplay. I always like to run in a full screen resolution. I don't like to see this and this and that. So I like to always run full resolution, get the full picture. I think it's kind of, again, puts you in the mood. Refresh rate of the monitor, frame rate lock to monitor. I am not exactly sure, but this is kind of like the VSync in your card, which does nothing, by the way, in the NVIDIA Inspector for X-Plane. X-Plane is not NVIDIA Inspector friendly, so nothing you do there will really affect X-Plane to the extent where it is visible. At least it's been my experience. So I leave this at the refresh rate of the monitor. Gamma is how the light, how dark or bright your X-Plane is going to look. I recommend that you make very little changes to this, maybe 0.1 or 0.2 maximum, whether plus or minus, in a plus or minus direction. And then, of course, you have to restart X-Plane to see the differences. But I don't recommend that you play with this. 2.2 works for me. It looks very good. It's not neither dark nor too bright, so don't mess with that. Just leave it as it is. As far as screen resolution, there are multiple of screen resolutions with different refresh rates. I'm currently, I have a 144 hertz monitor. I'm running it at the default monitor settings, so I'm not touching that. And by saying refresh rate monitor, I think I'm getting a very, very smooth experience there. Okay, so as you can see, I left the draw view indicator on, dim under high, G, draw high resolution from planet textures. By the way, this particular one here is not really going to make that much of a difference unless you're going to go to outer space or something. But in the normal sense, it actually you won't really need this unless you're going to fly really way up high, near the if you're orbiting Earth or something, then it will, yes, you will see a nice view of Earth from outer space. Other than that, you can disable this, and it won't really affect that much. It doesn't have really that much of an effect on performance. Runways follows terrain contours. This is something that I really like, and that gives you the kind of the bumpy, look on your runways. And it actually is very, very realistic. It gives a lot. I think it adds a lot to X-Plane. So by all means, leave that on. If you're using Pilot Edge, I think you need to turn this off, because otherwise you're going to appear, the other airplanes will appear above the ground if you have this turned on. And some of also the payware scenery recommend that you turn it off. It becomes really a complete matter of choice whether you want to leave it on or off. I have it on because I think it looks great. So that is definitely checked for me. Draw forest fires and balloons, draw birds, deers in nice weather, draw aircraft carriers and frigates, draw aurora. All of this is unchecked. I just don't like these. I don't think they add anything to my flying experience, and they take quite a bit of resources, so I just actually take them all off. Okay, stuff to draw. Number of trees. This is, by the way, the default setting that came when I installed X-Plane. And I've played with these settings a lot. I've maxed them out all. I've put them all on low. And I've done a lot of different tests. And believe it or not, the best setting I've got is actually what X-Plane had selected for me originally when I installed it. Populated for number of trees, which is actually 1, 2, none is of course none. Sparse populated works for me. Number of objects, tons, works well for me. Tons for number of roads. Siberia winter for number of cars. Now of these, this one here, number of cars, will really affect your frames. Okay, so this one will really eat up your frames. These three will mainly eat up your VRAM, and it might also affect your frames if you go into dense areas where it needs to auto-generate, some of the trees. If you have those, high-definition sceneries, then it will really, really affect this. So unless you have a 4.5 gigahertz machine or something really hefty, then I recommend that you leave these settings exactly how they were set by X-Plane during the default installation. So that is stuff to draw, and we're done with that. World distance. This particular setting here, I've noticed, has a lot of effect on performance. This is actually a performance killer right there. And if you put it on very high, you probably need to tone down all of your other settings to be able to run this at very high. It really eats up your frames. So at medium, it will probably give you the best performance. Low and very low, there isn't really much difference between very low, low, and medium. So these three settings here are pretty much the same, but the difference between high and very high is astronomical. So I recommend that you leave this at high if you have a machine similar to mine. If you have, of course, something that is a little more powerful, then you can crank this up to to extreme. But I recommend leaving this at high if you have a machine that is similar to mine. This is why I shared with you my PC settings, so that you have a baseline that you can relate to, or it could become your benchmark. If you have a machine with lower specs, then this becomes your benchmark and you benchmark against it. Shadow detail and water reflection detail. Those two settings here have a detrimental effect on frame rates. They will essentially kill your frame rates, okay? If you face any issues, by the way, the default setting that came with the installation was an overlay. But for me, I really like how the the shadow cast on inside the cockpit I think it's very realistic, kind of like prepared by default, that is set. It does eat up a little bit of your frames, but I think my machine can take it, so I leave it there. Oh, I forgot about the airport detail. Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. Now, the water detail, between medium, low, and none, I actually can see absolutely no difference. Okay, I think they all look the same. So I think you started seeing some difference at default, and default, by the way, is resource hungry. So when you put water on default and you're in a dense area, it can also affect your frames tremendously. Advanced and complete, I honestly don't see personally any difference between these three settings. Only this one, advanced and complete, eat up a lot more frames. I just can't see anything that meets the eye with advanced and complete. So my recommendation is leave it at default. Airport detail, I have it on high. The original setting was default, so I put it on high. And the reason I put it on high is that basically the runway lights and the way the taxi lights are rendered are a bit more pronounced with high setting. I haven't really noticed anything that that changes with high, medium, or low as far as the airport textures themselves. I think the airport textures are really affected by what texture resolution you have here in most of the cases. Now, I forgot something about this one, but I'll come back to it in a minute. So far we've covered this bit. Right. So before we move on to the special effects, let me just tell you one thing about texture resolution. Suppose that you have a 4096 resolution image. On an extreme setting, it will be rendered exactly at that resolution. If you select something like very high, that will be like 2048, and then here it will be 1024. Here it will be 512, and here, of course, this is where you will really notice huge degradation to the image being rendered. I'm not sure about the coefficient or the factor for the division, but I believe this is how this works. So it's divided by 2 each time from one resolution to the other. So my recommendation is, yes, by all means, when you buy these payware products, do buy ones with the highest resolution possible, and then you can always tweak your texture resolution here to get the effects that you like, whatever pleases your eye. Eye candy. Yeah. Right. So let us move on to the special effects here. 3D bump maps, definitely on. Gray detail textures. Draw volumetric fog, yes. Very, very nice. Looks very real. Draw per pixel lighting is on. HDR rendering is definitely on. Now, a lot of people have asked me about this. What if you turn it off? I believe that HDR rendering is the way X-Plane was meant to be used. The HDR rendering just adds a lot of realism. Some people don't like it because it tends to darken things at night. It looks really dark, but guys, in real life, it's pretty dark out there. So when you're out in about 33,000 feet in the middle of nowhere across the Atlantic, it's pretty darn dark. So I think this really adds again to the experience. I really like really the effect, and I leave it also on when in my prepared settings. It is also HDR lighting is also on. Atmospheric scattering, by all means, that should be on, and it does also look really nice. It really adds to the immersion of your flying experience. HDR Antialiasing. Now, this guy here I played with a lot. Okay, and what I've noticed is that the best setting is when I get a 4x super sample with anti-aliasing and FXAA. With that's a machine killer. If you go to ×8, that's really a machine killer. This is really what works for me and for my machine specs. Anisotropic filter level has absolutely no effect when you have HDR rendering enabled. So if you go 1 or you go 16 extreme, you'll get absolutely nothing. It's exactly the same. So I just leave this at 1. As far as cloud detail, now I'm using SkyMax Pro, and SkyMax Pro really is a weather generation engine. It really generates the clouds for you, the winds. Of course, it's online, so it pulls everything online, but it actually generates the weather for you. And it's quite hefty. It's quite difficult. I'll probably show you the SkyMax Pro settings in a minute. But I leave this at 10% too many, which is the lowest possible. And you still get a lot of clouds when you fly around in stormy weather. And it's quite a frame killer there. So I leave this at 10%. I'm pretty happy with the amount of clouds that I see. So no big deal there. Keep that at 10%. Maximum 15. But never go to, once you start going to 20 and more, then it starts really eating up your frames. Okay. Right here, lateral field of view. This is now really, by the way, I've done a lot of tests on this. There's no effect on performance. So from 60, I believe, from 60 degrees up to 75, I've noticed absolutely no change in performance, no change in frames, no change in rendered frame, the VRAM that gets consumed, nothing, absolutely nothing. There was absolutely no change in performance. So the lateral field of view, it's really a matter of preference. I've never seen anything below 70. I've seen very few people that use 80, but my personal preference is really 75. I think it gives you a good lateral view when you're inside the cockpit. So this is pretty much everything to do with the X-Plane settings. Let me show you what I have set for, as you can see here, you can see I've got nice clouds there, pretty nice, not bad at all, looks very nice. The textures, the resolution here on high looks really nice. So no complaints there. The aircraft itself, as you can see, the textures are nice. The reflections, everything looks pretty cool. Even the interiors, if you look at inside the the cockpit, everything looks good. You've got good image of everything. Your textures are loaded nicely, so you've got you've got a good experience there, good frames. Let's go ahead and if you go to data input and output and select frame rate, you will be able to see here the frames. So I've got about 38 at the moment. And this here, the CPU and GPU, this is how much utilization, how much your CPU and GPU are being utilized at the moment. Now, as this number increase, this number here will decrease. This means that you're placing heavy load on the CPU. At 0.26, that's pretty good. But once you reach the 40.040 and above, for either the CPU or the GPU, then your frames will start getting affected seriously. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so let me show you the SkyMax Pro settings that I have, and I hope that will also, if you are using SkyMax Pro, which I think, by the way, is a great weather generation engine. It really makes the weather in X-Plane very real. So performance higher, I've got this here in the middle. And by the way, folks, I did a lot of testing with this, so I played with this quite a bit. And these are the settings that give me the best performance. In fact, these settings do not affect my performance. So if I turn everything off, I would still get 42 frames here. this setting here is within my, I guess, the machine capability. So I don't get really any degradation in performance with these settings. So performance here is at the cloud draw distance is right. I'm not sure what the numbers are because the numbers are not displayed here. So I will leave this. You can basically pause the video and go ahead and change the settings, and then off you go. Minimum cloud size, maximum cloud size. I have high resolution puffs disabled, and the reason why I have this disabled is because when I turn this on, I get the definition on the cloud here, which makes it so unreal. I think the clouds here look very real. They look very natural. But once you turn on the the high resolution puffs, they kind of look kind of cartoonish. I think they look much better in lower resolution. This is off God rays. It's basically the effect of light when you are, it kind of look, I don't know how to explain it, guys. Turn it on and, move the plane around while you're on the ground, and you'll know what that is. I just can't really explain this. Current layer, low. Again, the resolution is low. The surface texture version is 1. There are different versions of of how these clouds look. I kind of prefer 1. It's completely a matter of preference, what version you like. Enable cloud reflections is off because that actually does eat up a lot of the frames, so I keep this off. Overcast quality is low. It actually, it's acceptable. I think it looks a lot nicer at medium or high, but it really affects my frames. So I leave this one at low. Lens flare effect, it does have an effect on performance. It is not that much. It's approximately, in the worst case scenario that I've seen, is about 5 frames. And in the best case scenario, it's about 2 frames. I just simply don't like lens flare effects. I don't think it looks real for the eye. I've never seen it myself, or maybe I have, I don't know. It's just, to me, it looks funny. So I always turn it off, even in prepared. It is off because I just simply, I don't like it. It's just a matter of preference. So if you like it, you can turn it on. Perhaps in areas that are not too dense, you can basically have fun with it and play with it on and off and see what effect it has on your system. Cloud shadows, definitely, yes, I'd like to see those. But what I've noticed is 2 things. At a higher intensity, the clouds look so prominent, so the shadows look so prominent, and they look kind of ugly. So I've reduced the shadow intensity right up to here, and that, I think, gives me the most realistic look. Also, this guy right here is a frame killer, so you got to be careful with this one when you set it. So these are my SkyMax Pro settings. So that's that, and we're done with that now. And now I'm going to show you the last step of this video, which is my NVidia control panel setting. Now, as I told you, the NVidia inspector has absolutely no effect on X-Plane. It just doesn't like it. So for X-Plane, I only use the control panel to basically set it up. Now, the first thing that you will notice, other than the default, is the Antialiasing FXAA. I have this turned on, and I've seen a lot of tutorials where this is off, and in the original profile, it is off. But what I notice is that when you turn it on, you get rid of the jagged lines on the aircrafts. So if you zoom in, if you go here and you look at, this particular, let me go ahead and, change the time here so I can, okay, so here I can show you better. As you can see, there are no jagged lines right there. And I've noticed that without the FXAA on, that I will get a lot of jagged lines here, and I just absolutely hate it. This looks marvelous, looks very clean, looks very crisp, looks very real. So I actually turned this on, and it really adds a lot to it, and there's no noticeable degradation to performance. So a definite on right there. I leave all the rest here is the default. Oh, this is all default, right? So when you reach the multi-display mixed GPU acceleration, this is another thing that most people use the multiple display performance mode, and I do not recommend that you use this unless you have multiple screens. So if you have multiple screens, 2 or more, by all means you should use the GPU acceleration. Other than that, this should be on single display performance mode, and I think it gives you, it got rid of my stutters, as a matter of fact. Power management, prefer maximum performance, and what this does is that it will make your GPU work a little harder all the time. So by all means, do use maximum performance. The texture filtering entrostopic sample option is off. Texture quality, I prefer to have this on high quality. Some people use high performance. I just prefer, I think my experience is better with high performance. Trilinear optimization is on. Now this here, threaded optimization, this is a biggie, guys. Normally in the normal default in the default profile for X-Plane, the threaded optimization comes as auto. And that, if you have it on auto, you will get those, you know, pauses that you get every now and then with X-Plane when you're flying. Like maybe every minute you get a pause for maybe 2-3 seconds and then everything's back to normal. I'm not talking about stutters here, but pauses that happen every now and then while you're flying, and it's really annoying, especially when you're making a video. It's very, very annoying. So if you turn off threaded optimization, turn it off completely, basically that will give you a much smoother performance for X-Plane. And the reason why is that X-Plane does not like to use multiple CPUs. It does not like to take advantage. It wants one CPU, wants to work with one CPU. So if you turn this off, at least 10 people have confirmed to me that they have benefited a lot from turning threaded optimization off, and that all the pauses that they used to get are gone. So the two big things for me here is threaded optimization should be off, and the anti-aliasing should be on. The rest, I think, you know, you can really have this on multiple and this on, you know, on adaptive, and you can probably get similar results. But these are the two big things, I think. I hope that that this has been a useful video for you, folks. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to comment and ask me. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. And I hope that you've enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you. Until next time, please take care of yourself and each other. Bye-bye for now.